Soy Diego Abad de Filipinas Far Eastern University y hoy hablo sobre la prensa hispano-filipina de Visayas, ¿no? Es muy cortito porque es solamente un overview, una perspectiva general, ¿no? Claro, hay, como digo, sobre la introducción de Emanuel, ¿no? Hay mucho que necesitamos pensar sobre el topic, ¿no? Pues empezamos. Al hablar de la prensa filihispana, a menudo el foco está muy centrado en Manila, más o menos, ¿no? Esto se debe en gran parte a la amplitud de la producción al final del periodo español y durante el periodo americano. Sin embargo, no hay que olvidar la producción de otras regiones. En las Visayas, en particular, existe una tradición de prensa filihispana que puede equipararse, ¿no?, a la de Manila. Otra pregunta, ¿no? ¿Por qué enfocar en la prensa visaya? El número de periódicos aparecidos fuera de Manila en los años después de la Revolución Filipina, ¿no?, son muchos. Y en las Visayas, una mayoría de periódicos ofrecen la cabecera en español. También la mayoría de los periodistas habían establecido carreras en literatura, ¿no? Por mi parte, quisiera dar una visión general, ¿no?, de la prensa filihispana en las Visayas. En primer lugar, profundizaré brevemente en el contexto histórico, destacando todos los títulos que he podido encontrar. Y a continuación me gustaría compartir algunas ideas, sugerencias, puede ser, sobre cómo podemos avanzar a partir de ahora. Pues, la producción fue escasa antes de la policía de imprenta de 1883, o del Ley Guillón, y por supuesto la guerra y la censura estadounidense también fueron factores que influyeron en la interrupción de algunas de las primeras publicaciones e incluso de las posteriores. En la región de Visayas, dos provincias concretas parecen destacar como centros de producción periodística: Cebu e Iloilo. Pues como centros de comercio en Visayas, Cebu e Iloilo tenían una gran población hispanohablante y bastante imprentas. Perdón. Aunque había publicaciones de otras provincias de la región, la gran mayoría procedía de Cebu e Iloilo. Como tal, el periodismo en la región comenzó con la aparición de El Porvenir de Visayas, editado por Diego Jiménez, y el Boletín de Cebu, creado por Eduardo Jiménez de Frades. Otras publicaciones periódicas son el Eco de Panay, también de Jiménez, La Revolución y El Siglo, y algunas de carácter religioso, Boletín Eclesiástico, fundado por el obispo español Martín Alcocer, y Boletín de la Diócesis de Cebu. Al principio del periodo colonial norteamericano de Filipinas se surgieron publicando más periódicos, pero fuertemente censurados. De ahí la corta vida de varios de ellos. La Justicia, fundado por Matías de Arrieta y Vicente Soto, fue finalmente suspendido por las autoridades americanas por opiniones subversivas del régimen estadounidense. Posteriormente, Soto publicó El Nacional y El Pueblo, ¿no?, otra publicación digna de mención que conoció un éxito relativo fue el primer diario de Cebu, El Nuevo Día, publicado por Sergio Osmeña y coeditado por Rafael Palma y Jaime C. de Vega. En Iloilo vio la luz un periódico proamericano, El Tiempo, publicado por Julio P. Hernández. fuera de las dos provincias, ¿no? Porque es la prensa de Visayas, ¿no? En Bohol también hubo un periódico de corta vida, La Oportunidad, editado por Jacinto Fortich. En 1901 se fundaron varios periódicos, entre ellos La Igualdad en Bacolod, Nuevo Heraldo en Iloílo, dirigido más tarde por Flavio Zaragoza Cano, Revista Católica en Iloílo también, El País de Cebú, fundado y dirigido por Joaquín Pellicena y López, Nueva Era de Cebú otra vez, dirigido por Jaime C. de Vera, Dionisio Jocoselem y Arsenio Clímaco. La Juventud, dirigido por Mariano Jesús Cuenco, The Courier en Cebú y El Precursor. Quizá el periódico más importante de su época es El Precursor. Contó con muchos futuros escritores y políticos entre sus redactores: Mariano Jesús Cuenco, Vicente Rama, Udarico Albiola, Vicente Padriga, Miguel Cuenco, Pío Cabajal y José María del Mar, ¿no? Pues hablar sobre el boom de la prensa española y el auge de los escritores regionales españoles. El periodo comprendido entre 10 y 20 fue testigo del auge de los periódicos en español. En Cebú se fundaron 4 de los periódicos de mayor éxito: La Revolución, el Boletín Católico, Nueva Fuerza y El Espectador. La Revolución, diario trilingüe de 4 páginas, fue fundado por Filemón Soto con su seudónimo Juan Guerilla y contaba con una distinguida lista de redactores: Buenaventura Rodríguez, Armando Osorio, Isidro Abad, Antonio M. Abad y Vicente Padriga, entre otros. En su época circularon entre 1,000, 1,000 y 3,000 ejemplares. El Boletín Católico comenzó como semanario trilingüe, fue fundado por José María Cuenco y tuvo una amplia difusión en la región. Nueva Fuerza, fundado por Vicente Rama, empezó como quincenal hispano-cebuano y se convirtió en trisemanal, ¿no? En 1919. El periódico duró hasta 22, antes de ser absorbido por su semanario hermano, el cebuano Bagong Kusog. Bagong Kusog en cebuano es Nueva Fuerza, ¿no? En su apogeo circulaban 7,000 ejemplares. Entonces fue muy éxito, ¿no? El Espectador era un diario hispano-cebuano fundado por Manuel Briones, cuyos redactores eran también Albiola, Padriga y Antonio Abad, Pío Cabajal y José María del Mar. Otras publicaciones periódicas españolas de esta década fueron el Atalaya de Negros en Bacolod, Eco de San Marilete, publicado en El Calvayo, La Nación de Cebú, Los Nacionalistas de Cebú, La Tribuna de Cebú, El Anunciador de Cebú, La Restauración de Bacolod, El Eco de Visayas en Cebú, La Opinión de Cebú y El Noticiero de Negros en Bacolod, y también El Pueblo en Iloílo, El Centinela Iloílo y El Demócrata de Cebú. Ahora, de los periodistas que he mencionado, hay más, ¿no? Pero estos son algunos que se convirtieron en escritores de renombre, ¿no? Buenaventura Rodríguez, como digo, María del Mar, Padriga, Abad, Briones, Osorio, Albiola, Pío Cabajal. Pero algunos de ellos escriben principalmente en vernáculo, pero con la sensibilidad hispanismo, ¿no? Puede ser. Pues durante esta época se produjo una tendencia hacia el uso creciente del inglés, por lo que la mayoría de las publicaciones de esta década empezaron a incluir una sección en inglés. Esto afectó a los lectores españoles, que empezaron a disminuir, y algunos periódicos optaron finalmente por eliminar por completo la sección en español. Por ello, solo se crearon unos pocos periódicos en español. La Solidaridad, también llamado el Ancatipunan, La Época. En esta publicación colaboraron conocidos escritores españoles de Manila como Bernabé y Balmori. Con una tirada de 1000 ejemplares, solo duró un año. Otros periódicos son La Tribuna en Iloilo, Civismo de Silay, Prensa Libre de Iloilo y Longsorranon de Cebú. También hay La Linterna de Bacolod, Patria de Cebú y La Nación de Cebú. Por fin, ¿no? en un futuro, podríamos explorar las demás regiones, sobre todo en torno a Luzón, como Ilocos y Bicol, pero quizá también Mindanao. Por ejemplo, en Mindanao, en Cagayan de Oro, hay Ancatarungan y también la oportunidad en Tagbilaran, ¿no? También, muy simplemente, crear una lista completa de la prensa hispano-filipina, ¿no? Y también redescubrir los periodistas y recrear sus biografías, o al menos una lista de los periodistas conocidas, ¿no? No solo los que escribían principalmente en español, sino también en la lengua vernácula, ¿no? Es importante centrarse en el corpus de obras por regiones, ya que existen solapamientos en las obras literarias en lengua filipina con las de lengua española. También podemos rastrear sus carreras. Algunos de ellos también fueron escritores de relativo éxito. Y, por fin, a explorar el estado de las publicaciones periódicas en las Visayas. Esta región fue menos devastada, más o menos, que Manila durante la guerra, por lo que existe la posibilidad de que se conservarán más de lo que ya está digitalizado. Yo sé que en la Universidad de San Carlos las está digitalizando, pero muchas siguen en mal estado. Y termino mi presentación. Gracias.
You talk about an overlapping of works in Filipino and in Spanish, and trying to actually produce a corpus of the different newspapers. When you speak of a solapamiento or an overlap, what do you mean? Do you mean like the same work was published both in Filipino and in or vernacular language and in Spanish, or?
I think it's more of what I meant was Perdona. Pues, thank you for the question. I think what I was thinking about when I wrote that, was I think going back to the idea, the question that I had earlier, if I can just find it, that perhaps in the same sense could we view the vernacular or the Hispanic press, and those in the vernacular, written in the vernacular, as similar, Yeah, so or in the same breath, can be viewed in the same breath. So that's basically what I was thinking about when I wrote that. Sí. Yeah. Yeah. Porque it's also, I'm code switching now, but it's also the same idea of the idea espoused by a lot of the Hispanic writers who, and Recto talked about this as well, the idea that Spanish was a Filipino language as well, So, I mean, it could be viewed in that same sense,
Bueno, gracias por tu exposición, fantástico. El hecho, sobre todo, desde mi punto de vista, que me parece que también es como un paso a seguir en muchos aspectos, es el hecho de ir abriendo, ¿no? El caso, por ejemplo, de que de repente toda la literatura pues era en español, en Manila, centrado, ahorita en periódicos que de repente son periódicos en otros lugares como en Visayas. Yo pensaba en Zamboanga, por ejemplo, que es un lugar importante de desarrollo del español, ¿no? En Filipinas. Y entonces me parece muy interesante, sobre todo también en función de lo que ha expuesto se ha expuesto anteriormente, que es el hecho de que a mí siempre me da un poquito de cosita, ¿no? Que de repente parece que como que parecería que se van como encapsulando los temas. Y por ejemplo, yo cuando voy trabajando todo lo que es el aspecto del teatro y de los libretos y demás, me pongo a pensar qué es lo que también estaba pasando en la cultura norteamericana en Filipinas, y me imagino que también había gente que estaba escribiendo literatura filipina en inglés, ¿no? Entonces, como ir teniendo ese panorama, en general como esas especies como de maquetas que de repente uno pone en medio de la catedral, una maqueta, pero tienes toda la ciudad, ¿no? ¿Y quieres que lo vaya haciendo en inglés o estoy...? It's okay. No, I think it's very interesting, you know, to have a scope, a wide scope about, you know, that it's not only the Filipino culture in Spanish, but too in English. And I think, for example, that going outside Manila and to see what is happening in Mindanao in English, no? And I think because maybe is the next step, no? To just see what is happening around in other themes about the Philippine culture, ¿no? Que a mí me parece que eso está fantástico, ¿no? El hecho de ir teniendo como una visión mucho más amplia de todo lo que va a pasar, sobre todo porque digo, bueno, también there is two writers in the Filipino culture is too, not just only the Spanish one during that time, no, because it's at the same time with a North American occupation. Y me parece que en ese sentido eso me parece que ya es el siguiente paso, ¿no? Como que eso nos va a dar como una muy interesante visión de lo que está haciendo la cultura hispano-filipina dentro de la cultura filipina, ¿no?
Sí.
Gracias por el comentario, ¿no? Yeah. So of course, when you talk about the panorama como la literatura filipina en inglés también, ¿no? I think it's fair only to also view it the same way. You mentioned, I think one thing that comes to mind, no, from your comment is how when Emmanuel discussed the por qué se escriben estos espacios de intersección, ¿no? El periódico actúa como mediador. I think it's also looking at, what I'm trying to get at is looking at the reader, no, as part of, how do you say, no? Cada expresión periodística, tanto por su origen, quien escribe, como por su destino, quien lee, no? So, in my understanding is that we should look at also those the lectores, the readers, no, and how they accept the text, no. So I think in looking at the literature or the press, no, written in whatever language in the Philippines, I think one consideration could be it's the readers themselves, no, how they accept it. That's just the idea that comes to mind, no, thinking about your comment. But yes, of course, looking at the whole panorama of Philippine literature and Philippine press in whatever language, because the idea is it is in the same space, no, created in the same space. That's definitely something also worth taking into account. I did focus on the Visayas just as to begin with, no, because there is a lot of when you talk about Philippine press, there's it's usually Manila-centric, usually, no, not always. But I was also surprised by the amount of production in the region itself. But of course, I mentioned briefly Ilocos. You mentioned Zamboanga also. So these are also, yes, Mindanao. Yes. So there are other areas. No, as Emmanuel said, we have to read all of them. No.
Thank you very much, Diego. And indeed, it is important, like you're putting the focus on different things. Years ago, I read something written by Lifshitz, I think, that he was saying that one of the factors for leaving people out from the canon, leaving writers out from the canon, was their origin or where they were writing from. And Manila was the main focus of canon making, in the sense that everyone connected to Manila had more chances to be in that list of canon, and Jose Maria del Mar is one good example of that as well. So I have one question in that sense, and it's very practical. Which archives have you checked? Because I read that and I thought, yeah, that's right. We should look into other places, newspapers from other places, writers from other origins, but it's sometimes difficult to reach. So, and I get to know about archives and digitization of newspapers sometimes just by chance. You are talking now about University of San Carlos digitizing newspapers, and I don't know if they are accessible online. I'm a bit lost in that sense, and also this overview, where have you seen all these newspapers? Where are they, or maybe they are from previous studies, like these practical things just for future work, which is very useful. And also just thank you for also putting the focus on the readership and the readers, and is something that Ernest did as well. By talking about the grandfather, and we were talking about this difference also in kinds of uses and perceptions of the newspaper from the readership and the authorial part, let's say. So I think it's very important to read it all, and we are applying that to everything, but yeah.
Thank you for that comment and that question. I think first on the idea, or the idea of Manila-centric production. No? I think worth mentioning also is that apart from contributions from Bisayan or Bisaya journalists to Manila publications, there was also the opposite. No? There were also contributions from Manileños to Bisayan journals. No? Now about the sources where I got this list from, I'll be honest, I've only visited the National Library and University of San Carlos. And of course, I looked at also, a big source here for me was Resil Mojares' Cebuano Literature, Cebuano Literature, I believe, no? That's the title. It's just a curiosity to me more than anything. Just trying to see at least where possibly these texts could still exist. But yes, I think, yeah, really, I've only just scratched the surface in terms of where I got these sources. No? Oh yes, to answer that, no. Right now, as far as I know, it's not. Their process is very slow. The last time I was there was maybe 8 years ago or 6 years ago, and at that time they were fixing the library. They were making renovations, and they had the newspapers in. They just had kept newspapers in Manila envelopes, folded, and they were in very bad state. No, but as far as I know, it hasn't been finished, the digitization, and it's still not online. No? Yeah. Thank you.
Una pregunta y un comentario. Al revés, un comentario y una pregunta. Okay, so my comment is thank you so much for your wonderful presentation, for reminding us about regional connections and rivalries that exist in the Philippines and that we can read through the Spanish press in those languages. That's it reminds me, and here's the comment, it reminds me of some of the theories about why Ilustrados, 19th century Filipino writers chose Spanish. Some people say that because they came from diverse linguistic backgrounds, that Spanish was a lingua franca for the revolutionary and reform-seeking writers of the time. And so I'm thinking how those dynamics might have continued or transformed into the 20th century. And that's very interesting to me because it seems like we can consider how non-Manila press will provide for us information and histories that are specific to different regions and that are invisibilized by a Manila-centric approach, but also how such efforts can be used to build connections and collaborations among different regions. They face different problems, but through Spanish they can potentially collaborate, work together, etc. So I just think that that's really fascinating how we can trace divisions and bridges between regional political and cultural struggles. My question for you, and this might just be speculation, but what, and we were discussing this earlier, so just to continue, what are your thoughts on the possibility of preservation of these journals and newspapers in the Visayas as opposed to in Manila? We were discussing things like destruction of cultural documents and processes of preservation. Do you think that they are in better shape or worse shape depending on where they were housed, etc.? What about the material state of these newspapers and the archives?
Okay, well, I'll try to answer first the question. In terms of the material state, I can't say for sure. No? But considering that it's been about 80 years already, no? Even if they still exist, no? They're still around, might not be in a good state. Now, on the question of the preservation of these works, of these journals and these newspapers, of course, part of the idea that I had when I was trying to think about what to talk about for today was really, that was a question that was going through my head. The idea we have to be able to collect them and then preserve them. No? But in terms of, it just goes back to the question of for who, right? And I think it's really, it has to be accessible. It has to be accessible to, particularly to those in the region, no? So because it is part and parcel of their history. No? But I think it should be for the Philippines, the country as a whole. No? Now, and I think that should be sort of for us who are investigating this. No, I think that should, and I think it is. No, it is for everyone a very integral part of the research. No? But I think to take it a step further is to make it accessible also to, well, to Filipinos. No? Yeah. I hope I was able to answer that. No? Now, to your comment, yeah, I was also looking at, I mean, you mentioned Spanish as a lingua franca and how it transformed in the 20th century, no? And then considering that non-Manila press provided information and history specific to regions. It's, of course, because it's a living thing, no? As we mentioned, no? I think it will always be a representation of wherever region it comes from, no? Whether or not it's in a specific language, no? It's by the writer themselves and also, once again, no, by the reader, no, and how they absorb it. Yeah.
Thank you. I join everyone in thanking you for bringing this to the table. And I'm interested in El Tiempo de Iloilo, and tomorrow I'll talk about that through Pura Villanueva Calao, who was then a provincial writer or a writer from the provinces and started working there. And then she moved to Manila and things changed, but that's a comment. Another comment is I was looking for a reference that I had from an article by Cynthia Rivera that discusses the magazine Filipinas, Revista Semanal Ilustrada, which is, however, published in Manila, but she talks about the fact that it was written in in Spanish and Tagalog. So also, just to consider what are the alliances between the languages in the newspapers and what time. So on the one hand, when are magazines being, when is English Spanish, Tagalog Spanish, or maybe Tagalog English? And also so that would be one comment and another point for reflection and research. In this particular article, she talks about the fact that the contributors to this magazine really voiced a much more strong anti-American political sensitivity. Obviously, it was also 1909. And also they voiced a much more concise kind of denouncement of racial issues and sexual harassment. And this is women contributions in this magazine. So this is very early, 1909, in a magazine that is in Spanish and Tagalog. And I read her translation of these comments, but it even says, the Spanish and the Americans profit from their lands and business. Do the Filipinos truly profit from farming, trading, railroads, trains, banks, mines, ships, and factories? No. This is the quote of one contributor, for example. So this is what Rivera is citing from contributors to this magazine. So something to consider, right? What is the actual conversation, the debate, right? That is being held in this particular bilingual, or maybe this one is published in Manila, but I wouldn't say it's as canonical as the other ones. And then thinking about these writers, we have attributed the tag of being Hispano-Filipino writers because they write mostly in Spanish, but they all speak another language at least. And do we actually know when and where do they write in English and in Tagalog, for example? And I'm thinking of Paz Mendoza in that kind of compilation of articles that she called My Ideal Filipino Girls. Among, 50 articles, I think there are 2 in Tagalog, and they are about language, and they are about the implementation of and the use of, when Tagalog became the national language, the conversation about the what is it called? Exactly, right. So and then it's written in Tagalog, right? So it's a very clear, she's targeting a very concrete audience, right? So talking about readership, right? And who are they writing for? So they are Hispano-Filipino writers because we're thinking about them as such, but they're also other writers, right? So we can also add this to the conversation that you're bringing, perhaps.
Now, when you mentioned considering the combinations of languages, I think this is a very interesting consideration. I think there's a lot that could be built on that, definitely. But at this moment, I can't say anything else other than that it is definitely a very interesting take, especially when considering, as the example you gave, Tagalog article talking about the wikang pambansa, no? It would be interesting if we could see or we could find one from a different language talking about another language too, no? Now, what I can say is, in terms of the combination of languages, going back to the introduction is, it's comercio, no? It's commerce. I think part of the reason why it was that these newspapers and periodicals started publishing in English also was because there was increasing readership, no? So that I'm fairly sure of, no? That it is press as commerce. No? So, but yes, there's a lot there that I think is very interesting that you mentioned, no, to consider. So thank you for that. Yes, that's another one.
Okay, I have another question for you. I'm just curious to know whether or not you've been in touch with scholars from the School of Journalism, because I'm wondering about the impact this type of work can have on Filipino people today, especially in schools of journalism, whether or not there's already some interest in this era of journalism in the Philippines or not, whether you've been sharing your work with anyone who is working on the history of Philippine journalism. What do you think about that?
To answer briefly, no, I haven't been in touch with any scholar on journalism that might be doing any research on this topic, no, especially on the focus of language, no. But at least in terms of the Philippines, as far as I know, there's none. There's no interest, no. Other than the ones that we are all familiar with, that was mentioned earlier, Cano and Godoy, Checa Godoy. And maybe Mojares you can include, no? But other than them, as far as I know, in terms of, at least in the Philippines, in the context of the Philippines, in Philippine journalism studies, no, or research, there's none, no? Maybe perhaps it's because they just are unaware. And I think to be able to have at the very least, no, very simplistic, but at the very least a list, no, could possibly open some interest or create a bit more interest, no. But yeah, maybe again, taking on your comment, that's something also that maybe we should be thinking about when we're dealing with this, is getting journalism researchers to be interested in this topic as well. Yeah. Thank you.
From what you're saying now, I'm just trying to remember. I think, not 100% sure, but I think that from the Filipino departments or the Filipino history in Filipino cultural studies, if I think of people who have done media and cultural studies in Filipino languages, not in Filipino, because if we are talking, for example, about 1910, we are not talking about Filipino, we are talking about Tagalog, Bisaya, or whatever, each of the different languages. But for example, people like Soledad Reyes, all the work she has done, it's not history of the journalism in the Philippines, but her articles in people around her have been publishing about the different newspapers in different languages. and also people from the media studies focusing on the comics. There are very good works on the political comics, satires of the period, and there are, it's not exactly history of the journalism in the Philippines, but with those publications, we can have a better picture. I mean, your comments just made me think of where we can find sources and people to work with.
I have one question too. I loved what you said earlier about not just preserving documents, but making them accessible to Filipino readers. And I inferred from what you were saying that that means not a simultaneous process of finding, digitizing, and translating into languages accessible to more people than just Spanish would be in the Philippines. What language would you consider best for such a project? For translating Visayan, Spanish language journals, and why? I can imagine many different answers to several different answers to this, but I'd love to hear from you.
Thank you for that loaded question. But first, on Beatrice's comment, no, yeah, thank you so much for that. Yeah, I didn't know again, but yes, definitely to look at the those doing cultural studies, no, particularly on the different newspapers and those focusing on political comics and satire. Yes, that is one. Yes, that looks like a very interesting sort of source, no, for more or less getting more from the field of journalism, no. Now on to that your question. The answer is I don't know. I don't know. I suppose if I were to look at, I mean, we are considering here, we have to consider, I suppose, one way is to consider who is going to receive that, no? So maybe depending on that, that may be a cop-out answer, no? Maybe an easy answer, but yeah, to be frank, I don't know what language specifically. No.
But luckily, it doesn't have to be translated into one language. So the good thing about digitizing is that it gives you the chance of getting it translated to the language you want. So with a plugin or with some kind of automatic translator, which is obviously not going to be perfect, but what is perfect, right? You can get the newspapers, or you can make the newspapers accessible not just to all Filipinos and Filipinas, but to everyone. So you can make Ilocano newspapers, or newspapers in Ilocano accessible to Irene in whatever language she wants to read them. So that loaded question, yeah, Dutch indeed. Happily doesn't need to be answered really.
My answer would be English potentially, and that's problematic and neo-imperial, but like if we were to put the effort into digitizing and like physically translating, the one that might get the broadest audience, even just within the Philippines, might be English. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it would be wonderful to translate it into Chavacano. Yeah, yeah. Yes, please.
If I could just add, from what you mentioned, Rocío, I just remembered what Isaac Donoso had said about the Spanish language, no, as the equalizer. I think I'm rephrasing it, no, but at least during the American period, it was the language that wasn't tied to a region, no. So maybe to follow your suggestion, English could possibly, again, that let me just say, you know, English could possibly be that language now, today, because it, to some degree, serves that purpose. But at the same time, as you mentioned, Rocio, there's no need for that anymore, no, especially if it's digitized.
Lo más importante es conservarlos. Ahí es donde está el trabajo, realmente, en la conservación.
And I'm wondering, because we had this project with UP, and it was supposed to be with the whole UP network, but it ended up being just in UP Diliman because of the pandemic, etc. They have the scanners, so I guess in Universidad de San Carlos they also have the scanners, they have the tools, so they are working on that. It's just they need people and time, I guess, for doing that. Yeah, it's always the same, and money for paying that people, of course. Yeah.
Parece que no hay más preguntas. Podemos concluir esta mesa, además de la ponencia. Muchísimas gracias, Diego.